let me introduce you to our speakers. So we have Mayank Garg. Mayank is Director of Information Security at Equinix. Mayank and his team are responsible for the IRM implementation and their journey so far with ServiceNow. Then on the call, we have Brian Risman and Jay Dial from Edgile. Edgile is one of our certified implementation partners. So Brian Risman is the partner at Edgile and Jay Dial is the director. Jay has been working very closely with the Equinix team. So is Brian in terms of their delivery and their rapid deployment of IRM. With that, I will turn it over to Brian to take us through the agenda, and let's have a fun session.
Fantastic. Thanks, Adi, and thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon. This is Brian Risman speaking from Edgile. Really appreciate Mayank joining us today for the session. I know you want to hear about his team's journey getting up and running successfully with ServiceNow Integrated Risk Management. So the agenda that we've laid out for us here today is that we've gotten through the welcome and introductions. We're going to spend about 45 minutes or so talking about the journey that we were able to support Mayank and team on from an implementation perspective. We'll talk about everything from getting started with, was it risk? Was it compliance? Was it both? What was some of their experience from that perspective? We'll talk about various techniques for continuous monitoring, including why content matters in terms of setting the foundations to start building some of that automation that I imagine all of you are looking for. We'll also talk about how ServiceNow and IRM has seen as a strategic business enabler for Equinix, and really what does the roadmap look like to continue to take advantage of the foundations that have been built upon. So we got a series of questions that we're going to be asking Mayank here. We got some dialogue. Jay was part of the implementation team, so he's going to be able to add some color as well to bring that to life. We do encourage you all to just certainly ask questions to the chat, which we'll try to weave into there as well. And then the last 45 minutes or so, somewhere around 3:45 Pacific, we'll get into the mixology class. Hopefully everyone got their kits. We'll have a lot of fun with that, and then we'll wrap up. All right. So with that, we'll get started with our first question. So as we know, ServiceNow makes the world work. Mayank, there was a decision that your team went through to evaluate a variety of GRC or IRM solutions and tools. What made your team decide that the ServiceNow risk solutions was the right solution for you?
Thanks, Brian. We started our journey almost 2 years back, and we wanted to see what we have built so far within ServiceNow platform so we can leverage on the existing capabilities we built, and we do not have to start from the scratch. So we noted that we already leveraging ServiceNow ITSM solution from a couple of years back, and we have built user access provisioning and deprovisioning process on our critical compliance portfolios to meet the regulatory requirements. We look into additional GRC vendor, but due to tightly integrated of our digital workflow of the common platform, we decided to go with ServiceNow GRC platform for policy management, policy and compliance management module, risk management module, and audit management module. So that's basically, we looked at a lot of vendors, but the key was the integration for us, and we want to utilize what we have built so far, Brian.
Now that makes perfect sense. I think, Mayank, we, and for those of you who are not familiar with Edgile, we're an elite partner of ServiceNow from an implementation perspective. We're also part of the Wipro family now. My team made the decision, though, about 4 years ago to move our entire risk and security business to go to market exclusively with ServiceNow. So we've been implementing GRC tools for decades, but made the decision because of the power of the ServiceNow platform. When ServiceNow owns the CMDB, arguably a lot of integrations are there already that you want to take advantage of to drive for that automation, workflow, the ticketing, that user experience. We know that doing risk and compliance activities are usually arduous activities, especially when you look to engage the business. So getting them, keeping them in a platform that they're arguably more comfortable with, because it's a tool and a platform that Equinix has been using, really, I think is the decision. We moved our business there because we're seeing our clients, take advantage of the technology and platform that you are today at Equinix.
Absolutely. That's what the rationale. So we do not have to start from the scratch, as Brian. So the whole purpose was to utilize a lot of integration, which we already built with ServiceNow platform for other common modules of ServiceNow we were using for our GRC platform.
Fantastic. That's great. So maybe let's talk about where did you start? I know we had the chance to partner up with you. We know that we were able to get through our first initial phase one. There's more to come. Obviously, this is a journey. It's never just one and done. But where did your team start? On that journey.
So we were looking for a partner. We were looking for a integration partner, not a one-time vendor. So we're looking for who can help us support in a long term, help us with our strategy, which we're trying to do. So we started with our journey with policy and risk management module. We build our policy approval workflows. We build a policy exception workflow. Then internally, we also worked on building the continuous compliance automation assurance. What I mean by that, we were integrating with a lot of our different in-scope compliance systems to meet the regulatory requirements. So we started with 8 Active Directory password integration with ServiceNow, Oracle DB privilege access review with ServiceNow, application privilege review, network privilege access review. So we started with our policy risk management, then we moved into audit modules, and those are the 3 modules. So now we are moving towards quantitative risk management module based on the FAIR open source methodology. And we are in the process of working with Edgile to get that implementation completed this year.
Yeah, I know, Mayank, when we kind of initially started, big important piece of your program was quick time to value. How can you start to demonstrate value and get up and running? You didn't have time to spend a year building the program before you could demonstrate to the organization that ServiceNow was the right fit for you. And I know that, for Equinix, our quick start methodology from Edgile worked very well, which helped you get, up and running, short time to value, kind of in that 8-10 week range where we got requirements defined, we did the implementation, user acceptance testing, and then we built upon that. And those were the foundations for kind of where you're going. And as you mentioned, the program's maturing, moving into more of the FAIR risk methodology and some of the automation with some integrations to RiskLens and others. So I think from our perspective, we felt like we were a good partner because we gave you that opportunity to set the foundation, show value, and get that buy-in internally to help expand usage.
Absolutely. I think, Jay, you're absolutely right. The quick wins, which the package Edgile have, will really help us to speed that. And we were in the Agile mode to build those, and we may call ourselves DevOps model. We developing it, went live, and then we re-enhanced it. And as business start using, or internal stakeholders start using the platform.
Fantastic. No, that's great. And I think one of the other things we kind of had a lot of time to talk about was our philosophy around content. We believe that there's really 3 main pillars to helping organizations get up and running with a successful GRC or IRM program. The first one, is what technology platform you're going to use. In this case, ServiceNow. Another one is, are you going to do this internally, or are you going to look for a partner to support you on that journey? So who's going to be your implementation partner? And then really the third piece, that we see as critical to this is the content. So, those laws, regulations, and frameworks that each organization needs to comply with. A lot of those are specific to industries. A lot of them are global in nature, et cetera. They're continuously changing, as I think many of you are aware as well. So, maybe, Mayank, do you want to spend a minute or two about, what we're able to do from a content perspective, and how is it able to help you achieve your risk and compliance objectives?
Absolutely. So as I stated earlier, we started our journey 2 years back. And when we started journey, we were looking for a content provider to map our compliance portfolio to build a common control framework. We went with a different vendor, and we realized quickly that the content is very key for us from a compliance portfolio mapping, as well as from risk statement library perspective. So we switch over to Agile Content Library, which gave us a little bit extended compliance portfolio. On top of that, it gave us the risk library, so we can map our risk statements to the control objective to policies. What that means is this content gave us, we can quickly perform a security assessment based on the entity types we have defined in the GRC platform. and is ready for internal GRC team for use that assessment in a very fast-paced manner. On the other hand, we also utilize ServiceNow NIST CSF content package to perform our NIST CSF assessment. So content is really matter because the technology stack is there, but the content, I feel like content is the differentiator, key differentiator for us to meet several compliance requirements and mapping those into a common control framework.
Yeah, I know Mayank, when we first kind of started, you get a big focus internally on some ISO 27000 series, compliance regulations, and how you can, build that program, find some efficiency, but also be able to report on other regulations. And I think Edgile's content offering, which we call automated regulatory compliance, or ARC for short, really helped Equinix in that regard. Our library has over 670 different laws, regulations, and best practices. And what we found that, given the nature of your business, a lot of those are applicable to you because you need to be mindful of what your customers are also going to be asking about. And so having that ability to be able to report and show compliance against those different regimes, I know the team found a lot of value in being able to test once, assess once, and report many in terms of the different compliance elements.
Definitely, Jay. That was very key for us to and provide a value demonstration to our management that we had and we are able to reduce various compliance evidence collection, but because we were testing once and meeting many compliance requirements.
No, absolutely. And I know with ISO being a big part of your program, and there was actually a new version of ISO 27002 that was just released in about the last 6 weeks or so. And that's something we're expecting to have in our quarterly release in about 3 weeks' time. So Equinix will take advantage of that subscription, being able to incorporate the latest and greatest regulatory guidance. So also making sure that you're staying current and relevant on those as well.
And I don't want to take you guys off topic, but you guys maybe also think about with the content. One of the things we also worked with Mayank and team on was around the policy mapping to the content. So I don't know if Mayank or Jay, if one of you maybe want to talk about why it's important to also consider your policies and standards as authoritative sources, just like you would the laws, regulations, and frameworks, and how we're able to achieve that.
So I can start, and maybe Jay, you can add on it. So the reason we did Agile help us with the policy to common compliance portfolio mapping, so we can see how many policies tied to which common controls, and it's tied to our policy exception. So if we start seeing that policies exceptions is coming in related to certain control set, it give us a indication that these are the themes or common themes we're seeing in where the cyber hygiene needs to be readjusted or reevaluated and resurfaced to leadership, that there are common not only from a regulatory component perspective, also from a security hygiene, we're missing some key basic control sets because we start seeing a lot of exception coming from various business units asking for temporary or accepting the risk that that cannot be resolved. So definitely policy to compliance mapping really helped us, and they also help us from a statement perspective, and that which controls tied directly to those policies.
Yeah, and so maybe kind of said a little differently is what we see with our clients is you need to be mindful of both your compliance obligations, whether that be ISO, NIST, PCI, or others, but you also need to keep line of sight to your internal governance documents, so what your policies and standards are saying. And when you go to a control owner, and that may be someone in technology, someone in the business, and they're saying, well, what do I need to do? Whether that be for something like password standards or process control, they want to just know what control should be implemented. But you as a compliance function want to make sure that you keep the regulatory elements and the internal governance elements in mind. So that's a kind of agile recommended approach where we take your policies and standards, decompose them, and map them to the same common control objectives that we have in our ARC content. So when you look at something like password standards, you see all of that regulatory guidance, but also your internal mandates. So you can craft a common control that really addresses all elements of your business. And Mayank, I see we have a question come in here, and you mentioned earlier that you use the NIST CSF content pack, and the team or the folks here on the phone are asking kind of, how are you using that? Are you using that to perform self-assessments? Kind of how did that help accelerate?
So we started we're not doing right now a self-assessment, but the goal is to do the self-assessment. But we hired a third-party assessor, and the third-party assessor is using that platform to perform the assessment. So basically, the content, the NIST CSF content had 108 control sets. So we took those 108 control sets, map it based on the rating criteria of NIST CSF. And then we apply, and they have a forms where you can ask the questions to the stakeholders within various business units. And based on that, the score gets calculated. But we hired a third-party assessor. The goal is in future, we will start using ourselves. But on the top of that, Equinix is pretty complex environment. When we did the NIST CSF work, we're not doing within one specific business unit. We doing that NIST CSF assessment on various business units. So next goal is to build a dashboard. So the leaders on the a leadership view of seeing that how we doing NIST CSF is how the NIST CSF score against one business unit versus another business unit. And do we see any common themes across the organization where we take it? Hope that answered the question.
No, excellent.
That was great, Mike. Thank you. No, fantastic, guys. We know content is super important, so it was great to chat about that for a few. As we also know, important to engage the business and the variety of stakeholders who participate in the various compliance and risk management activities. I kind of see this topic in kind of in two pieces. I think one of them, in order for Mayank, you and your team to run your program, you are reliant on various control owners, process owners, policy owners, issue owners from the business that you need to engage with in order to do your risk and compliance activities. I think similarly, there's a variety of functions across Equinix, product teams, legal teams, et cetera, who are also responsible for various risk and compliance activities. So I know we had a chance to partner with one of those groups about, bringing their risk assessment process, onto ServiceNow. So I think from an overall collaboration and coordination, leveraging a platform like ServiceNow, how are we able to better enable the various teams and get them on board for using, ServiceNow IRM?
Sure, Brian. So what we did is when we started this journey, we worked with various business units or teams and walked them through a high-level vision of a GRC platform, and very high-level, what are the capabilities ServiceNow GRC platform provide in terms of policy and compliance module versus audit module versus risk management. We hired a PMO to work with us internally on working with various teams to track the project status from inception to completion. What works for us was that we have a good buy-in from our leadership, who was able to communicate the vision of GRC platform to different team leaders. We started our foundation on IRM module. What worked for us was that our goal was to use the out-of-box functionality of IRM module, and we created a playbooks with the help of Agile playbooks, training material, which we shared with different teams to perform POCs in our UAT environments. And based on UAT environment, based on that POC they perform, they provide us a gap fit analysis where our system implementation and to see how deviation, what we have built on the foundation, how much deviations are, and then we work with that team. So we started with product team. They work with us on utilizing the risk module to perform their risk assessment. What worked for them, one of the area came for them was they want to segregate the data. So we used a tool called GRC segregator to segregate the product risk management with another risk management to meet their requirements. So what worked for, I think what worked for was good buy-in from our leadership and communication, and tag along the various team members as we going through our journey of building this GRC platform.
Yeah, and I would say one thing, Mayank, having dealt with the team at Equinix and other clients that really struck me about, your organization is the buy-in that every level of leadership has around ServiceNow. Everyone, from the CISO all the way down, has that kind of single kind of strategic objective to make ServiceNow the platform of record for these things. And having set those foundations, as you said, we were able to do a bit of a roadshow and start to show the capabilities and start to ask the question, well, why wouldn't ServiceNow work for you, to help get those other groups on there, and ideally getting to that point where we have that single pane of glass where we've got all these different functions and risk groups using the same platform, using the same reporting mechanisms, that we're able to paint a very clear picture for senior management.
Absolutely.
Perfect. That was great. I think similarly, I think there's a lot of folks who are probably at various points on their journey with getting up and running with, ServiceNow risk and GRC solutions. Some might have done it already. Some might be starting. There are various different points here. I think having been on this journey for quite some time, I think you mentioned 2 years, Mayank, no project goes perfect. There's likely tons of lessons learned. What would be some of the advice that you would share with the group here? About your experience working on this kind of multi-year journey, that you think would be helpful, so others don't need to touch the stove since you might have done it already.
Yeah, sure. So I would suggest start small, build the platform foundation right. Because if you build the foundation right, and the content, and as content is key, what compliance portfolio you want that in your content, how you map that, build the foundation, minimize customization, and use the off-the-shelf technical capabilities. By doing that, you're reducing the friction, and it will bring all part of organization together towards a common purpose. So what we did is we were constantly focusing on basically start small. We use the agile methodology to build the solution, test it out, deliver to the end users, and if there's any new enhancements needs to be done, but the primary focus was minimize the customization. The reason is, as you move to new upgrades of ServiceNow GRC platform, you want to minimize that maintenance activities as much you can. So I was only one keyword I would say: start small, build the platform foundation right.
That's excellent. Oh, please, Jay.
I was just saying, that's kind of how we kind of approach these quick start packages, where they're predefined business, functional, and technical requirements, and we give the team what we call solution relevant inputs, and that's starting to take what is your organizational risk methodology, and how do you approach these different elements that we then tailor and tune, but it's aligned to industry best practices, aligned to the native architecture of ServiceNow, so we're able to deliver that in a short window of time and set those foundations, and really sets the team on the journey. And as Mayank said, trying to avoid boiling the ocean out of the gate, and take that crawl, walk, run approach that, if you're measured in the way that you approach this, you can have a very successful program built out.
I think Mayank and Jay, you both kind of touched on something. I think our quick starts are inherently set up in a way to do this, but you brought up a word around customization, Mayank, as well. And I think, intentionally, that's something we really recommend our clients avoid going down that path. there's so much native functionality that ServiceNow is releasing from an IRM perspective. They're releasing stuff, every quarter, arguably 2 major releases and then minor releases that are coming out, where, we should be able to take advantage and achieve, 99.9% of our clients' requirements, if not all of them, through that natively available configuration options. And there can be heavy configuration, but it's still within the bounds of not customizing the way it's intended to be used, because I think that'll allow you to have a more sustainable solution, so that you can use it for, many years to come, instead of a couple years later, trying to start over again. So I think that's the intention of our quick starts and how we like to partner with our clients.
Brian, there's a question. Travis, go ahead.
Yep, please.
Yes, maybe you answered it, Brian, and sorry everyone, I'm getting back from the RSA conference, so not on video yet. But I've heard another customer put it, and they've successfully worked with you all around how you don't know what you don't know. What would you say, to other folks that going through that process? What are the, some of the pitfalls? What are the things they should think about? Because you have a lot of perspective working with a lot of different customers. To that question, you don't know what you don't know. What are some of the things you should be aware of?
Yeah, Mayank, anything come to mind about things that you didn't know that you wish you knew early on before starting this journey? I think the one thing that comes to mind for me, and feel free to agree or disagree, is stakeholder alignment is key. And I think part of your ability to move very quickly is because you had leadership brought in from the top. I think oftentimes it's very difficult to get that stakeholder alignment. And if you don't have it, the project timeline often becomes very long because you feel like you're herding cats here. You're not able to make progress because you're revisiting history again with each new stakeholder group. So I think that's one of the things that I think, your team has did a really nice job at. And I think when we struggle, I'll say to my clients often, they say, how long will it take to get up and running with, issues and findings management and remediation or policy and compliance or whatever it is? My response is actually, it takes my team actually not a lot of time to do these things. It's how quickly can you consume the decisions, and do you have the right stakeholders aligned and enabled to make those decisions and make progress? So I think that's what, Equinix did a great job, and Mayank and the leadership team out there, to align those stakeholders in advance of us showing up so that we can make, progress at a reasonable pace.
Absolutely, Brian. I think as I alluded earlier to, is a stakeholder buy-in and getting their buy-in from the beginning. The only challenge part for us in the beginning was we got their buy-in, but we have to build a solution so they can test and utilize that. So they become they're becoming our secure, I would call it GRC champions, if I may. And they are going and utilizing to different teams and different business units and saying that this solution has built. So for example, policy management is a perfect example. We started policy, we built the policy management module for InfoSec. Then we start socializing with the IT organization. Now we're socializing with different organization, because each organization has some kind of a compliance requirements needs to be met. And they're using, sometimes they use SharePoint, sometimes they're using other technology tools too. And the maintaining and having a one unified platform, it's reduced friction, is improve the customer experience. So the goal is basically, yeah, we got the stakeholder buy-in, we build something, and we start doing road shows with those stakeholders, and they become our GRC champions.
Well, I think this is spot on transition to both the question that we have in the chat, as well as, really what we want to talk about next, and really talking about, were there other solutions that you have integrated with or are currently integrating with, on the ServiceNow platform or elsewhere, like RiskLens? I think similarly, the question that we have in the chat is, what was the value of already being and building your GRC and IRM program on top of ServiceNow? Was it the cost and comfort of the system, or availability of the CMDB? Was it vendor data? What was it they're able to take advantage of? So maybe you want to talk about integrations, sitting on top of ServiceNow, et cetera.
Yeah, sure. So I think definitely cost is one of the factor, and we want to utilize what we already have built. So for example, we already have integrated with ITSM, and ITSM was one of the solution we have built a lot of intake forms, which was utilizing for compliance portfolios, which we were using. So we, for example, user access provisioning, deprovisioning, termination process with various systems. So we want to utilize that platform and that helps us to quickly integrate with ServiceNow. GRC module, we are in process of building a CMDB. That's also another integration. We had a platform which we have a vulnerability management system where we were using kind of doing a patch management SLAs. So we have a patch management policy or standard, and we tag with the critical systems and see how well we're doing with our patch SLA. So the reason was existing, lot of existing integration we have built, and the key was that ServiceNow had a lot of REST APIs, which is out of box, which in their ServiceNow store, which we quickly able to utilize. And we also utilize the integration hub solution they have to build our integration module. What we are in process to build right now is we are integrating with our risk lens, which is a quantitative risk analysis platform, and a third-party VRM platform for our vendor risk management.
Fantastic. No, that's great, Mayank. I think a lot of opportunities for integration, building on those foundations, and I think your team is certainly well on that journey. What I wanted to chat about next was one of our implementation philosophies that we chatted about very early on in the project was really about reporting first. And we got to have a joke, being in a ServiceNow world where everyone wants automation and workflow, but our philosophy is really about reporting first and workflow last. The reason is we want to make sure that management and leadership has, information that's actionable at their fingertips real time that you can run your business on, especially from a risk and compliance perspective. We also know workflow and automation is super important. But at the same time, no one wants to wake up to an inbox every morning with 50 notifications. That's not a smartly built process, if you will. So let's focus on the data, the right fields, the right information that you need from a reporting perspective. We make sure that's part of the requirements phase up front. There's some great out of the box reports. We also like to tailor some additional reports, and then we make sure that we smartly automate after that. So maybe you want to talk about some of the reports and dashboards that your team's using to make sure you're getting the right level of reporting from ServiceNow IRM?
Sure. So we built a couple of report or dashboards out. We have a risk register dashboard, which will give us what are the top risks we're seeing based on the risk assessment we perform. We in process of building an issue register dashboard, which will give us all the issues we're seeing across the organization based on the data we have in ServiceNow. We build a policy exception dashboard where basically end users can go in and fill out the policy exception intake form, and then we can see what are the policies, which are the I'm just going to take an example, like change management policy is getting hit most of the time. So there are a lot of exceptions related to change management. So then we provide that oversight to our leadership. Then we have a policy approval dashboard, which we also use for our audit evidence collection, which policy is going to be ready for renewing next quarter versus 6 months from now. And then also we have a policy to control mapping dashboard, which we talked earlier on, that we did that mapping to see how many controls are mapped to each specific policy statement. So those are the 5-6 dashboards we currently using. And there are a lot of other dashboards are in the platform, and there are a lot of out-of-box dashboards or reporting structures there too. Anything?
Mayank, I have a question for you, and this is something that comes up with a few of our clients. You mentioned issues. So how are you tracking issue management today? And how did you kind of weave that in in your entire implementation from an issue tracking, and what kind of data are you driving out of issues? If you could
Sure. So there's several ways we are tracking issues. One is we build an issue intake form in ServiceNow. So basically, end users reported as self-reported issues to us. Another is we have various compliance team within the organization. They perform operational audits. They perform compliance audit. So what issues they are seeing? We do a lot of security assessments audits or NIST assessments. Those type of issues, we build a platform where we take all those sources and then display in the issue register dashboard. What that drives is this issue will drive your audit module remediation workflow, basically. So you will have a remediation owners, you assign SLAs to it, and you monitor it to make sure that those issues are resolved in a timely manner. And this is basically, if it's not, then we bubble it up to our leadership. Like which issues has been past dues, which issue has not been remediated. And so we're working with various business unit with the organization and trying to build a centralized single source of issue register, if I may, global issue register. So we can see the themes coming out from a various issue. I'm just making it up. For example, if we see a issue related to share account, and we're seeing it gets hits through internal operational audits, it's also getting is also reported by our external auditors. So it's a theme, and so what we need to do to remediate, what are the programs or projects we need to put in place to remediate from a root level, root cause. So we do a lot of root cause analysis based on the issue register dashboard.
Thank you, Mayank.
Yeah, I think, I would say, Mayank, I think you and the team kind of started your journey on ServiceNow from a risk and compliance perspective with, issues management was one of those first modules. And we see that a lot with our clients because it is such a global process. There's, business stakeholders, the variety of different IT stakeholders, upper management who get involved in the issues register, the remediation process, and it can be the most, ubiquitously used process across the organization from a GRC perspective. And so it gives you that opportunity to get folks introduced and start the transition, whether that be from a legacy system, from spreadsheets. And so you took that very natural step of starting there because it gets folks using the system and connected in it.
Yeah, certainly right. We see a lot of that, Jay, and I think it's exactly the journey that Mayank and team went on. And great question, Adi. So thanks for jumping in. All right, well, we got one more topic left, and then we're going to jump into the mixology here. So Mayank, maybe you want to share with the group, what's next on the roadmap? I know we're currently engaged on some items now. Obviously, there's more to come. So what's next?
Definitely, there are 3 areas we're looking to integrate. Definitely, we want to integrate with RiskSense platform for our quantitative risk assessment. That's one area focus. We are big on continuous compliance assurance. So we're looking at various security tools which we have in-house and mapping with our compliance portfolio and see how we can integrate. So we are talking to a third-party security vendor, scanner vendor, to see if we can automate our configuration management and password management controls, and we can do a continuous monitoring on those. So what I mean by that is when the passwords which we have based on our password standards, and if there's any deviations to those passwords, the scanners runs it and send an output a notification to us. So we are doing a continuous assurance, and by doing that, we are remediating in a, I won't call it real time, but very real time, near real time. And this will also help us that if auditors are coming in, or it ties to whether it's internal auditors or external auditor coming in, we already know that we have a gap. So that reduce some level of effort not to be required from the external audit, and we are monitoring. So that there's a big push on continuous compliance monitoring, especially on the technical controls. And third thing is we're trying to see on integrating our ServiceNow platform with VRM solution to bring VRM issue register into our platform. So we can have a single pane of glass for all issue register dashboard. Those are the three big ones, Brian.
Fantastic. Well, a lot more to come, which is fantastic. And this is certainly a journey, and really just genuinely appreciate your partnership and, working, through all these sessions and sharing your knowledge with, clients on the call here today. So again, thank you for joining us. And I think now we're looking forward to getting into the mixology portion of the event that I think everyone's been waiting for. But that was really fantastic content, Mayank. So thank you.
Thank you, Brian, for your partnership and ServiceNow. Thank you.
Our pleasure. But thank you. All right. With that,
pleasure.
we're going to get going here on the mixology portion.